War is a messy and typically unpopular endeavor. Over the years, Americans have grown to distrust the government and how it conducts war. 55 years ago, the Pentagon Papers revealed that it was explicit U.S. policy to mislead citizens on the war in Vietnam, which incidentally, like this thing in Iran, was never officially referred to as a war. It was a so-called police action. And because Americans were misled, the American people did not know of the escalating offensives or the widening fronts of that war. When the press began reporting more and more from the conflict zone, and Vietnam became the first war to practically air on American televisions, the tide turned. As the years went by, presidents got smarter about trying to convince Americans about the value of military interventions abroad. In 1999, you may remember this, Bill Clinton spoke to the nation as NATO dropped bombs on Serbian forces in Kosovo to prevent the ethnic cleansing of Kosovar Albanians. That decision was divisive, but the message was clear. Quote, "Do our interests in Kosovo justify the dangers to our armed forces? I've thought long and hard about that question. I am convinced that the dangers of acting are far outweighed by the dangers of not acting," end quote. When the U.S. was preparing to invade Iraq, then Secretary of State Colin Powell gave a famous speech to the United Nations in February 2003, establishing the case for war, claiming Saddam Hussein was developing weapons of mass destruction. That wasn't true. No such weapons program existed, but at the time, the justification worked for the American people, or at least some of the American people. A month after that speech, a Gallup poll showed 72% of Americans were in favor of war against Iraq. I don't think any presidential administration has gotten an A+ on war messaging, perhaps with the exception of the days immediately following the attacks of 9/11. But what the American people are receiving right now from this commander-in-chief might just go down in history as the most convoluted and misleading sales pitch for a war in this country's history. In a CNN SSRS poll taken before Donald Trump's address to the nation on Wednesday, you may have missed this, but he delivered an Oval Office address on Wednesday night. 67% of Americans believe that Donald Trump does not have a clear plan for the war in Iran. That number's gone up 7 points since the first strikes on February the 28th. It's quite an understandable opinion to hold because based on everything he's done and said, Donald Trump does not have a clear plan. And if he does, if I'm wrong, he's not effectively communicated it to the American people. He is employing his typical non-committal, say-whatever-works approach. On one hand, he seeks to assure a spooked stock market that the war will be over soon and that shipping through the Strait of Hormuz will resume. But with the Iranians dug in, it seems he also doesn't want to signal weakness. The problem is countries, international organizations, economic markets, they all hinge on the president's word, and his word is not sound. His address on Wednesday was the greatest hits of weeks' worth of lies, contradictions, and nonsense, leaving no one with a better understanding of why we're actually in this war, what the strategy is, or for how long it may go on. He's declared that the war has already been won, by the way, but that the U.S. still needs to, quote, finish the job. Which is it? Is it done, or do we need to finish the job? He first called the strikes on Iran, quote, major combat operations. 1 week later, he described it as a, quote, little excursion. He's used that expression more than 10 times, little excursion. It's kind of what you do on a weekend. He signaled that the war is winding down, yet more troops are being sent to the Middle East. He's claimed that Iran's nuclear threat was imminent, which is difficult to square with his claim that Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities were, in his words, obliterated during U.S. and Israeli attacks last June. He said the goal was never regime change in Iran, which is hard to believe, given that Trump's first video announcing the strikes explicitly encouraged Iranians to overthrow their government. It's even harder, then, to believe when Trump says that Iran's regime did change when the actual son of the last supreme leader was chosen as his successor and hardliners still control that country. He claimed the U.S. had complete and total control of the airspace over Iran, and then 2 U.S. jets were shot down by Iranian forces yesterday, and 1 airman is still missing. And don't even try to understand Trump's rationale around the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's strongest leverage point. It's always been Iran's strongest leverage point. And the closure of that strait has rippled through the global economy. In just the last hour, Trump posted on social media, quote, remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait? Time is running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them. Glory be to God. I keep saying glory be to God because that's a new one for Trump. Normally he says, thank you for your attention to this matter. Glory be to God. One of the many deadlines and countdowns he's issued. Seems Trump has been improvising plans for the Strait from the start. A warning, the mixed messaging you're about to hear is going to hurt your brain.
Mr. President, when will the Navy start escorting tankers through the Straits of Hormuz?
Today is a big day where we're pounding a certain area that has very much to do with the Strait. And I think we'll get it going very soon.
It won't be, I don't believe, too long. We're knocking the hell out of the coast. It's basically the coast and the water. And it won't be too long. And if France or some other country wants to get oil or gas, they'll go up through the Strait and Hormuz Strait. They'll go right up there and they'll be able to fend for themselves. I think it'll be very safe, actually, but we have nothing to do with that. In any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally.
Aha! The Strait will just open up naturally. Trump's off-the-cuff musings about the war perplexes even his own advisors. Advisors who speak regularly with the president told Axios that he's mostly improvising rather than following any clear plan. Quote, he likes to keep his options open, spitball with different audiences, then capitalize if he thinks he sees an opportunity, they say. Quote, nobody knows in the end what he's really thinking, a senior advisor said. Quote, they had a plan for the first week, and since then they're making up the plan as they go along, a former U.S. official said. Yikes. Trump's shifting rhetoric and unpredictability is destabilizing the market and, in turn, the global economy. Just look at how the markets reacted before and after Donald Trump's Wednesday address. When Trump first announced that he'd be addressing the nation, markets believed that he might indicate that the war was winding down. The price of oil fell below $100 briefly in the hopes that Donald Trump would announce a clear off-ramp to the conflict. But he did not. So right after the speech, markets reacted the opposite way, with a stock sell-off and oil shooting past $110 a barrel. Mixed messages have also left some of our allies confused. The French President Emmanuel Macron has maybe said it best, quote, when you want to be serious, you don't say every day the opposite of what you said the day before, end quote. The French president also criticized Trump's renewed threats to leave NATO. Trump said in a phone call with The Telegraph on Wednesday that he was strongly considering leaving the collective defense alliance. So let's say we ruin our relationship with our strongest military allies. What's the plan after that? This is going to shock you, but there isn't a plan for after that, or at least not one that we've heard about. Trump's hawkish allies like Senator Lindsey Graham and the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will all say it's part of a strategy. Stay unpredictable, bob and weave if you can. You know, if you don't stop moving, they can't get you. Don't let anyone know your next move. I would argue that Donald Trump doesn't even know his next move. Maybe that's what happens when, according to NBC News, the President of the United States gets his war briefings in the form of a daily compilation of the military's biggest strikes on Iranian targets, like a wartime highlight reel. The unclear picture of the war effort is not due to a lack of communication. We're getting plenty of communication. It's a lack of a plan. Instead of an articulated case, Donald Trump is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, and so far, nothing has stuck.